At a marriage retreat, she publicly humiliated me. I exposed her cruelty, the group united against her. Karma hit, and I walked away completely. Pine trees surrounded the rustic lodge, and I could see other couples unloading their cars. My wife was already complaining about the 2-hour drive, the lack of cell service, and how the whole weekend was probably going to be a waste of money. Classic behavior from her lately. We'd been married for 6 years, and somewhere along the way she had developed this habit of making me the punchline of every conversation. What started as playful teasing had evolved into something much darker, public humiliation disguised as humor. I'd been tolerating it, thinking marriage required sacrifice and patience. But lately, something inside me was changing. The retreat leader, a bearded man in his 50s, gathered all 12 couples in the main lodge for introductions. We sat in a circle on mismatched chairs and couches. The atmosphere felt warm and welcoming, until it was our turn to share. "So, what brings you both here this weekend?" the leader asked with genuine interest. Before I could speak, my wife jumped in with that familiar smirk. "Well, we're here because my husband thinks size doesn't matter, but I'm starting to disagree." She paused for dramatic effect, looking around the room. I mean, his paycheck, his ambition, his confidence, all pretty small lately. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt every eye in the room shift uncomfortably. A few wives exchanged glances that screamed, "Did she really just say that?" One husband actually shifted in his seat and looked away. This wasn't the reaction she was expecting. She tried to recover with a nervous laugh. "I'm kidding. Of course, we just need better communication." But the damage was done. The energy in the room had shifted completely. I looked directly at her, my jaw clenched. Communication works both ways. Some people talk too much, others don't get heard enough. My voice was calm, but it carried an edge that made her blink twice. The leader quickly moved to the next couple, but I could feel the tension radiating from every corner of the room. The other couples were stealing glances at us, and none of them looked amused by her performance. During the coffee break, I noticed how other couples were clustering together, but nobody approached us. My wife seemed oblivious, chatting loudly about the outdated decor and complaining about the weak Wi-Fi signal. Meanwhile, I could hear fragments of conversations from other groups, and they weren't flattering. "Did you hear what she said to him?" I felt so uncomfortable. Poor guy. The first day's activities included trust exercises and communication workshops. Every time the leader asked us to share something positive about our partner, she managed to twist it into a backhanded compliment or another subtle dig. When I praised her organizational skills, she responded with, "Well, someone has to be the adult in this relationship." By evening, the atmosphere around us was ice cold. Other couples were friendly with each other but kept their distance from us, or more specifically, from her. Back in our cabin, she finally noticed the social freeze-out she'd created. "These people are so uptight," she said, brushing her hair aggressively. "Can't take a joke. Maybe this whole retreat was a mistake. Did you see how that one woman kept staring at me, and her husband barely said 2 words all day?" I sat on the edge of the bed, watching her in the mirror. "Maybe they weren't staring because they're uptight," I said. "Maybe they were staring because they couldn't believe what they were hearing." She turned around, hairbrush still in hand. "Excuse me?" The jokes, the comments, the constant put-downs. "You humiliated me in front of complete strangers today, and now you're confused why people don't want to be around us? Oh, please, you're being dramatic. I was just trying to lighten the mood." "Lighten the mood?" I stood up. "You told a room full of people that I'm inadequate in every possible way. How exactly does that lighten anything?" Her face flushed red. "You're overreacting. Everyone jokes about their spouse." "No, they don't. Did you hear anyone else tear down their partner like that? Did you see anyone else's husband sitting there humiliated while their wife performed for an audience?" "I wasn't performing." "Then what do you call it? Because from where I sat, it looked like you were trying to get laughs at my expense. And guess what? Nobody was laughing." The argument escalated quickly from there. Voices raised, accusations flew, and 6 years of suppressed resentment came pouring out. I told her exactly how her constant criticism and public humiliation had been eating away at me. She fired back with every petty grievance she'd been storing up. "You want to know what's really small?" I said, my voice cutting through her defensive rambling. "Your respect for me. Your consideration for our marriage. Your basic human decency. How dare you?" "How dare I? I've been daring to put up with this for months." But here's what I won't dare to do anymore. I won't sit quietly while you try to make me look like a fool. Not here, not anywhere, not ever again. The cabin walls were thin, and our voices had been carrying. I was sure every couple in the nearby cabins could hear every word, but I didn't care anymore. Some conversations need to be loud enough to shatter the silence that's been protecting the wrong person. She stormed into the bathroom and slammed the door. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, knowing that tomorrow would either bring change or chaos. Either way, I was done being her verbal punching bag. Morning came with an uncomfortable silence between us. She barely spoke during breakfast, shooting me occasional glares while stabbing at her scrambled eggs. The other couples were polite but distant, offering brief nods and forced smiles before quickly returning to their own conversations. The retreat leader announced the day's activities would focus on authentic communication and emotional honesty. Perfect timing considering the explosive conversation that had echoed through the entire cabin complex the night before. During the first workshop, we were paired up for an exercise called mirror conversations, where one partner had to repeat back what they heard the other say. When it was our turn to demonstrate for the group, she couldn't resist her usual performance. "I feel like my husband doesn't appreciate the effort I put into our relationship," she said, looking directly at me with practiced victim eyes. I was supposed to mirror back her statement, but instead I said, what I heard was, "I feel like my husband doesn't appreciate when I criticize him publicly and treat him like he's beneath me." A few people actually snorted with suppressed laughter. She shot me a look that could have melted steel. "That's not what I said." "No, but it's what you meant. Isn't this supposed to be about honesty?" The leader intervened before she could respond, but the damage was done. The room's energy had shifted, and not in her favor. During lunch, she tried her usual approach of making conversation through complaint and criticism. "The food here is so bland, and did you see how that one couple keeps staring at us? Some people have no manners. Maybe they're staring because they're wondering why someone would trash talk their spouse at a marriage retreat," I replied, not looking up from my sandwich. "I'm not trash talking you. What would you call it then? Because everyone else seems to have a pretty clear idea of what they're witnessing." She was about to respond when the woman from the couple at the next table leaned over. "Excuse me, I couldn't help but overhear. Are you two actually here to work on your marriage, or is this some kind of performance art?" My wife's face went red. "I'm sorry," the woman continued, "but if you're here to work on things, maybe save the comedy routine for open mic night. Some of us paid good money for a peaceful weekend." The woman's husband nodded in agreement. "Yesterday was pretty uncomfortable for everyone. Just saying." "Who asked for your opinion?" my wife snapped. "Nobody had to ask. You've been broadcasting your marital issues since the moment you arrived." I watched this exchange with fascination. Finally, someone else was calling out the elephant in the room. My wife looked around the dining area, expecting support, but found only uncomfortable faces, and people suddenly very interested in their meals. "This is ridiculous," she muttered. "Everyone's so sensitive." "Or maybe," I said quietly, "everyone's just tired of watching you try to tear me down for entertainment." The afternoon session was called Boundaries and Respect. The timing couldn't have been more perfect if I'd planned it myself. The leader talked about how healthy relationships require mutual respect and how public humiliation is a form of emotional abuse. I felt vindicated. She looked increasingly uncomfortable as the leader described exactly the kind of behavior she'd been exhibiting. During a break, an older gentleman approached me. "Son, I've been married 32 years. What you're dealing with, that's not normal marriage stuff. That's something else entirely." His wife nodded. "We've been coming to these retreats for years, never seen anything quite like what we witnessed yesterday." "Thanks for saying that," I replied. "Sometimes you start to wonder if you're crazy." "You're not crazy," he said firmly. "You're just married to someone who doesn't know how to treat people with basic respect." When we reconvened, the leader asked each couple to share one thing they appreciated about their partner and one thing they'd like to see change. When our turn came, I went first. "I appreciate that she's organized and gets things done. What I'd like to see change is the constant public criticism and the way she treats our private issues like entertainment for others. Direct, honest, no sugarcoating." Her turn. "I appreciate that he's reliable. What I'd like to see change is his oversensitivity and his need to make everything about himself." The room went quiet. Even she seemed to realize she'd just proven my point perfectly. "So let me understand," the leader said carefully. "He's asking for basic respect, and you're calling that oversensitivity? He's being dramatic about a few harmless jokes." "Harmless to whom?" the leader asked. Because it seems like everyone in this room found yesterday's comments pretty harmful to the atmosphere we're trying to create here. Several people nodded. One woman actually said exactly under her breath. The session ended with an assignment. Spend the evening having an honest conversation about what we really wanted from our marriage. No audience, no performance, just truth. That evening, back in our cabin, she was furious. I can't believe you embarrassed me like that, making me look like some kind of monster in front of everyone. I didn't make you look like anything. I just stopped pretending your behavior was normal. My behavior? What about yours? Undermining me, contradicting me, making me the villain. You made yourself the villain. I just stopped being your enabler. She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. For 6 years, I'd been her safety net, her excuse maker, her apologist, the guy who smoothed things over after she'd insulted someone or created drama. That version of me was officially retired. I don't know who you think you are anymore, she said. I'm the guy who's done making excuses for your behavior. I'm the guy who's not going to sit quietly while you try to make me look like a fool. I'm the guy who's finally paying attention to how other people react when you're around. Other people don't matter. Other people are the mirror that shows us who we really are. And right now, that mirror is showing you something you don't want to see. The night ended with her storming out to take a walk, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Through the thin walls, I could hear other couples having normal conversations, laughing together, planning their futures. Meanwhile, I was sitting alone wondering how much longer I could live with someone who seemed determined to destroy my self-worth, one public humiliation at a time. Change was coming, whether she wanted it or not. The third day started with what the retreat leader called community feedback sessions. Each couple would sit in the center while others shared observations about their interactions. I had a feeling this wasn't going to go well for us. We weren't the first couple up, which gave us a front row seat to how these sessions were supposed to work. Other couples received gentle suggestions about communication styles, or encouragement about their obvious affection for each other, positive, constructive, supportive. Then came our turn. We sat in the center of the circle and I could feel the collective intake of breath from everyone else. My wife put on her fake smile, the one she used when she thought she was about to charm her way out of trouble. The retreat leader started diplomatically. What observations do people have about this couple's dynamic? Silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Finally, the older gentleman who'd spoken to me yesterday raised his hand. Well, I've noticed a pattern of public criticism that seems unhealthy. My wife's smile flickered. Excuse me? A younger woman jumped in. It's been really uncomfortable to watch. The constant put-downs, the way you talk about your husband like he's not sitting right there. I think you're misunderstanding our dynamic, my wife said, her voice getting defensive. We joke around. Some couples are more direct than others. There's a difference between joking and humiliating, said another man. What we've witnessed isn't joking. The woman who'd confronted us at lunch yesterday spoke up next. Look, I paid $800 for this retreat. Having to tiptoe around a narcissist wasn't part of the package deal. Excuse me? My wife's face flushed red. You heard me. Your behavior has been selfish, attention-seeking, and frankly exhausting for everyone here. We came to work on our marriages, not watch you tear yours apart for sport. Other voices started joining in. The dam had broken. It's been really hard to focus on our own relationship with all the drama you've been creating. The way you talk to your husband, I would never speak to mine that way. It's like you're performing instead of participating. My wife looked around the circle, searching for even one sympathetic face. She found none. Even I wasn't coming to her rescue this time. This is ridiculous, she snapped. You people don't know anything about our relationship. We know what we've seen, the retreat leader said calmly. And what we've seen is a pattern of behavior that's toxic, not just to your marriage, but to this entire group dynamic. Toxic, she stood up abruptly. I'm toxic. What about him? She pointed at me. He's been undermining me, contradicting me, making me look bad since we got here. No, I said quietly, still seated. I've been refusing to enable you. There's a difference. See? He does this constantly now. Everything is my fault. Nothing is ever his responsibility. The older woman who'd been coming to these retreats for years spoke up. Honey, I've seen a lot of troubled marriages. What your husband is doing isn't attacking you. He's defending himself. There's a big difference. You don't understand. He's changed. He used to be supportive. You mean he used to be silent? I said, finally standing up. He used to make excuses for you. He used to apologize to people after you insulted them. That version of me is gone. Exactly. You've become impossible to live with. The retreat leader stepped forward. Let's pause here. What I'm observing is someone who's upset that their partner is no longer accepting mistreatment. That's not a marriage problem. That's a character problem. My wife whirled around to face him. You're supposed to be helping couples, not taking sides. I'm not taking sides. I'm pointing out patterns. And the pattern here is clear. One person consistently tears down their partner in public. And when that partner finally stands up for themselves, the first person claims to be the victim. I am the victim. Everyone here is ganging up on me. No, said the woman from yesterday. Everyone here is finally saying what we've all been thinking. Your behavior has been inappropriate from day one. My wife looked around the circle again, this time with genuine panic in her eyes. For the first time in our relationship, she was in a room where her manipulation tactics weren't working, where people saw right through her victim act. This is insane. You're all crazy. Are we? I asked. 12 different people, all with the same observation about your behavior. Are we all wrong, or is there something you need to look at about yourself? Don't you dare psychoanalyze me. You're not qualified. I don't need to be qualified to recognize disrespect, and I don't need a degree to know that I'm done accepting it. The retreat leader tried to regain control of the session. Perhaps we should take a break and reconvene with some strategies for moving forward. There is no moving forward, my wife declared. Not with him, not with this group, not with any of this. You people are all judgmental hypocrites. She stormed toward the door, then turned back. And you? She pointed at me. You're going to regret this, all of it. After she left, the room sat in stunned silence. Finally, the older gentleman spoke. Son, in 32 years of marriage, I've never heard a spouse threaten their partner like that in public. Neither have I replied. But then again, a lot of things about this relationship are becoming clear to me for the first time. The retreat leader approached me as others began to disperse. How are you processing all of this? Honestly, I feel like I've been living in a fog for years and it's finally lifting. Seeing how other people react to her behavior, it's validating in a way I didn't expect. That's a normal response when you've been in an emotionally abusive situation. Sometimes it takes outside perspective to see what's really happening. Through the lodge windows, I could see my wife pacing back and forth outside, talking animatedly on her phone, probably calling her mother or sister to complain about how everyone was treating her unfairly. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the urge to go comfort her or smooth things over. Instead, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a long time: clarity. The afternoon session proceeded without her. Other couples shared their own challenges and breakthroughs, and the atmosphere immediately became more productive and supportive. It was like a dark cloud had lifted from the room. When I returned to our cabin that evening, she was sitting on the bed with her arms crossed, clearly ready for battle. Well, I hope you're happy. You've successfully turned everyone against me. I didn't turn anyone against you. Your behavior did that all by itself. My behavior? What about yours? What about loyalty? What about standing by your wife? Standing by you would mean enabling you to continue hurting me and making everyone around us uncomfortable. I'm done doing that. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see the wheels turning in her head. She was realizing that her usual tactics weren't working anymore, that the dynamic between us had fundamentally shifted. You've changed, she said finally. Yes, I have. And there's no going back. The final day's morning session was supposed to be about moving forward together. The irony wasn't lost on me as I sat alone at our designated spot. My wife had spent the night alternating between silent treatment and sudden bursts of accusation. She'd barely slept, tossing and turning while muttering complaints under her breath. She'd skipped breakfast entirely, claiming she couldn't face those people. But as the session began, she appeared in the doorway, looking disheveled and defiant. Every conversation stopped as she walked to her chair beside me. The retreat leader had clearly prepared for this moment. Before we begin today's activities, I think we need to address what happened yesterday. Healthy relationships require accountability, and avoiding difficult conversations doesn't make problems disappear. My wife sat rigidly beside me, radiating resentment. I'm here, aren't I? She said, despite being attacked by everyone in this room. You weren't attacked, the older woman said gently. You were given feedback about behavior that was affecting the entire group. Same thing. No, it's not, I said quietly. Being held accountable isn't the same as being attacked. But you've never learned the difference. She turned to stare at me. How can you sit there and not defend me? How can you let these strangers tear me apart? Because they're not tearing you apart. They're telling the truth. And I'm tired of pretending the truth doesn't matter just to keep the peace. The retreat leader stepped forward. This seems like a good opportunity for that honest conversation we've been building toward. What do each of you really want from this marriage? I looked around the room at all these couples who'd witnessed our dysfunction over the past 3 days. I want to be treated with basic respect. I want to stop walking on eggshells wondering when the next public humiliation is coming. I want a partner, not a critic. My wife's response was immediate and sharp. I want my husband back, the one who supported me instead of joining a mob against me, the one who understood that marriage means loyalty, not betrayal. Supporting you meant enabling your cruelty, I replied. Loyalty doesn't mean staying silent while you damage both of us. She stood up abruptly. This is exactly what I'm talking about. Everything is my fault. Everything is about how terrible I am. What about your problems? What about the things you do wrong? Like what, specifically? The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. You're not ambitious enough. You don't make enough money. You're not romantic anymore. So your solution is to humiliate me in front of strangers? To make jokes about my inadequacies? To treat me like I'm beneath you? I was trying to motivate you. The room fell silent. Even she seemed to realize how that sounded. The retreat leader spoke carefully. Humiliation isn't motivation, it's abuse. I'm not abusive, she snapped. That's ridiculous. I've never hit him. Abuse isn't just physical, the younger woman interrupted. What you've been doing to him is emotional abuse. We've all seen it. My wife looked around the room desperately, searching for any sign of support. Instead, she found 11 people nodding in agreement. This is insane. You people don't know what you're talking about. We know what we've witnessed, the retreat leader said. And what we've witnessed is a consistent pattern of public humiliation, gaslighting, and emotional manipulation. She turned to me, her eyes wide with something between panic and rage. Are you going to let them talk about me like this? Are you going to say anything in my defense? I looked at her for a long moment. 6 years of marriage flashed through my mind. All the times I'd made excuses for her behavior. All the times I'd apologized to people after she'd insulted them. All the times I'd convinced myself that her cruelty was somehow my fault. No, I said simply. I'm not. What? I'm not going to defend behavior that's indefensible. I'm not going to make excuses for how you treat me. I'm done being your enabler. Her face went through a series of expressions: shock, hurt, anger, desperation. Finally, she settled on fury. Fine. If that's how you want it, then I want a divorce. The words hung in the air like a challenge. She was clearly expecting me to panic, to beg her to reconsider, to return to my old role as the apologetic husband who'd do anything to keep the peace. Instead, I felt a sense of relief so profound it was almost physical. Okay, I said calmly. Okay? Her voice cracked. Yes, I think that's the best solution for both of us. She stared at me in disbelief. You're not going to fight for us? You're not going to try to work things out? With who? The person who just spent 3 days humiliating me in front of strangers? The person who thinks abuse is motivation? The person who's more concerned about loyalty than respect? I'm your wife. You're someone who's forgotten how to be a wife. There's a difference. The room was completely silent. Even the retreat leader seemed stunned by how quickly things had escalated to this point. She looked around the room one more time, as if expecting someone to intervene on her behalf. When no one did, something inside her snapped. You know what? All of you can go to hell. This whole retreat is a joke. These people are judgmental hypocrites. And you? She pointed at me. You're going to regret this for the rest of your pathetic life. The older gentleman who'd been married for 32 years spoke up quietly. Ma'am, threats and insults aren't going to fix what's broken here. Nothing's broken except his backbone, she shot back. Actually, I said, standing up, my backbone is the only thing that's finally working properly. That's when something shifted in the room. One person started clapping. Then another. Within seconds, the entire group was applauding. Not mockingly, but supportively, like they were celebrating someone finally standing up for themselves. My wife looked around the room in shock and rage. You're all sick. This is sick. Applauding the destruction of a marriage. We're not applauding the destruction of your marriage, the retreat leader said calmly. We're supporting someone who just chose self-respect over self-destruction. She stared at all of us for another moment, her chest heaving with fury and humiliation. Then she turned and stormed toward the door. "This isn't over," she called back. "You'll regret this, all of you." And with that, she was gone. The room remained quiet for several minutes. Finally, the older woman spoke. "Honey, in all my years, I've never seen someone fight so hard against being treated with respect." I sat back down, feeling emotionally drained but strangely peaceful. "I should have done this years ago." "You did it when you were ready," the retreat leader said. "That's what matters." Outside, I could hear a car engine starting. She was leaving without me, which was fine. I'd figure out transportation later. Right now, I just wanted to sit in this room with people who understood what healthy relationships looked like. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. I thought she'd left for good. But 20 minutes later, she came storming back through the lodge doors. Her face was red, her hair disheveled, and she looked like she'd been crying angry tears. "The car won't start," she announced, to no one in particular. "Battery's dead." The retreat leader offered to call roadside assistance, but she waved him off dismissively. "I already called someone. They'll be here in an hour." She stood in the doorway, clearly wanting to leave but having nowhere to go. "You can sit down if you want," the retreat leader offered diplomatically. "I'm not sitting with these people," she snapped. "Not after what just happened." But she didn't leave either. Instead, she hovered near the back of the room, alternating between checking her phone and shooting hostile glares at everyone. The other couples were trying to focus on the session, but her negative energy was impossible to ignore. Finally, the younger woman, who'd been most vocal yesterday, turned around. "Are you planning to stand there radiating hostility for the next hour? Because some of us are trying to learn something. I can stand wherever I want." "You can, but you're making everyone uncomfortable again." "Good. Maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to gang up on me." The older gentleman sighed heavily. "Nobody ganged up on you. We gave you honest feedback about behavior that was affecting all of us." "Honest feedback," she repeated mockingly. "You people think you're so enlightened, so perfect. Well, let me give you some honest feedback." I could see where this was heading and stood up. Don't what? Tell the truth? Share my perspective? Isn't that what this whole retreat is about? It's about constructive communication, not revenge." She laughed bitterly. "Revenge? This is rich coming from the man who just humiliated me in front of a room full of strangers. You humiliated yourself. I just stopped helping you cover it up. There it is again. Everything is my fault. Saint Perfect over here never does anything wrong." The retreat leader tried to intervene. "Perhaps we should take a break until your ride arrives." "No," she said, her voice rising. "I've been sitting quietly for 3 days while everyone picked me apart. Now it's my turn to talk." She moved to the center of the room, the same spot where couples had been sharing vulnerabilities and breakthroughs. But instead of seeking connection, she was clearly preparing for war. "You want to know the truth about my marriage? My husband is a weak, pathetic excuse for a man who hasn't been able to satisfy me in any meaningful way for years." Several people gasped. Even I was shocked by how low she was willing to go. "He's boring in bed, lazy around the house, and completely lacking in ambition. I've spent 6 years trying to motivate him to be better, and this is how he repays me." "That's enough," the older woman said firmly. "I'm not finished. You all want to paint me as some kind of monster? Fine. But at least I'm honest about what I need from a relationship. At least I don't pretend everything is perfect when it's not." "There's a difference between honesty and cruelty," the retreat leader said. "Is there? From where I stand, you've all been pretty cruel to me." I watched this performance with a mixture of disgust and pity. This was who she really was when backed into a corner, vindictive, manipulative, and completely unable to take responsibility for her actions. "You know what the real joke is?" she continued. "All of you sitting here judging me, pretending your marriages are so healthy, but I bet if we really dug deep, we'd find plenty of problems in this room." She pointed at different couples. "You two barely looked at each other during breakfast. You've been here 3 days talking about communication, but I haven't heard you exchange more than 10 words. The couple she targeted looked uncomfortable, but didn't respond. "And you?" She turned to another pair. "I heard you arguing through the cabin walls last night. Something about money and in-laws. So perfect, right? Having disagreements and working through them isn't the same as public humiliation," the woman replied calmly. "Oh, please. You're all hypocrites. Perfect little couples with perfect little problems. ganging up on the woman who dares to speak her mind. I'd heard enough. Speaking your mind and being deliberately cruel aren't the same thing. And you know it. Cruel? I've been trying to help you become a better man for 6 years. By tearing me down in public. By making jokes about my inadequacies. By treating me like I'm beneath you. By being honest about areas where you could improve. The room fell silent again. She looked around, seeming to realize that her outburst wasn't winning her any sympathy. She just confirmed everything everyone had been saying about her character. "This is hopeless," she muttered. "You're all against me." She started walking toward the door, then stopped and turned back. "You know what? I hope you're all miserable. I hope your perfect little marriages fall apart, and you remember this moment when you're sitting alone wondering what went wrong." As she spun around dramatically to make her exit, her foot caught on the edge of a loose floorboard. Her arms windmilled as she tried to catch her balance, but momentum was working against her. She stumbled forward, crashed through the screen door, and tumbled down the 3 wooden steps leading to the lodge entrance. The sound was spectacular. A combination of splintering wood, a surprised shriek, and the wet splat of someone landing face-first in the muddy flower bed that had been recently watered by the morning sprinklers. For a moment, nobody moved. We all stared through the broken screen door at the sight of her lying face down in the mud, her designer retreat outfit now completely ruined. Then someone snorted with laughter. Then another person. Soon the entire room was struggling not to laugh at the perfect physical manifestation of her emotional crash and burn. She pushed herself up on her hands and knees, mud dripping from her face and hair. Her mascara had run in dark streaks down her cheeks, and there were leaves and flower petals stuck to her clothes. "Are you hurt?" the retreat leader called out, though his professional concern was clearly battling with the absurdity of the situation. She didn't answer. Instead, she struggled to her feet, slipping twice more in the mud before finally gaining her footing. When she turned to face us through the broken screen door, she looked like a swamp creature from a horror movie. The humiliation on her face was complete. All her anger, all her vindictiveness, all her attempts at maintaining superiority had literally fallen flat in the mud. She opened her mouth as if to say something, then seemed to realize there was nothing left to say. Without a word, she trudged through the mud toward the parking lot, leaving a trail of dirty footprints and wounded pride. Through the window, we watched her sit on the hood of the dead car, still covered in mud, waiting for her ride. She pulled out her phone and started making calls, probably spinning the story of how everyone had been terrible to her. "Well," the older gentleman said after a long pause, "I've never seen karma work quite that efficiently before." The younger woman was still giggling. "Did you see her face when she hit the mud? I almost feel bad for laughing." "Don't," I said, surprising myself with how calm I felt. She spent 3 days trying to humiliate other people. Sometimes the universe has a sense of humor about these things. The retreat leader began organizing cleanup of the broken screen door, but everyone was still stealing glances out the window at the muddy figures sitting alone in the parking lot. For the first time in years, I felt like justice had been served, not through revenge or cruelty, but through her own actions coming full circle. She'd tried so hard to make others look foolish that she'd made herself the biggest fool of all. "How are you feeling about all this?" the older woman asked me quietly. I looked out at my soon-to-be ex-wife, covered in mud and isolated from everyone around her, and felt something I hadn't expected: peace. "I feel free," I said. "For the first time in years, I feel completely free." Her ride finally arrived, a beat-up sedan driven by what looked like her sister. We watched through the window as she climbed into the passenger seat, still covered in mud, gesturing wildly as she told her version of events. The car pulled away, and with it went 6 years of my life that I'd never get back. But for the first time, I wasn't mourning what I was losing. I was celebrating what I was gaining. The other couples rallied around me for the rest of the afternoon. They shared stories, offered advice, and reminded me that healthy relationships don't require you to sacrifice your dignity. The older gentleman gave me his card and invited me to join their monthly dinner group. "Divorced guys need friends who understand," he said with a knowing smile. The retreat leader pulled me aside before we left. "You showed remarkable strength this weekend. Most people take years to recognize emotional abuse, let alone stand up to it." 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. She tried every manipulation tactic in the book: threats, tears, promises to change, even showing up at my workplace. But I'd learned to recognize her patterns. And more importantly, I'd learned my worth. I kept the house. She got the car and half the savings. Most importantly, I got my self-respect back. The best part? I ran into one of the couples from the retreat at a coffee shop last month. They told me she'd been calling other participants, trying to get them to testify about my cruel behavior during the divorce proceedings. Nobody returned her calls. I'm dating someone new now, someone who builds me up instead of tearing me down, someone who treats me like a partner, not a project. The difference is night and day. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never gone to that retreat. If I'd kept making excuses for her behavior, kept apologizing for things that weren't my fault, kept believing that love meant accepting abuse. But I don't wonder for long. Some mistakes you only need to make once. The best decision I ever made was refusing to be her punching bag anymore. The second best decision was walking away when she showed me who she really was. They say divorce is failure, but sometimes divorce is the most successful thing you can do. It's choosing yourself when nobody else will. It's refusing to settle for less than you deserve. I'm finally with someone who appreciates what I bring to the table instead of constantly pointing out what's missing from the meal. And that muddy fall, it was just the universe's way of giving her exactly what she'd been dishing out to everyone else. A face full of dirt and a lesson in humility. Some people never learn that lesson. I'm grateful I did. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.